Look at us now. Tip to
Ooh, Jesus.
Oh.
Shout out to Morning Kombat.
Do you want a margarita?
Yes!
My God!
To us, doing what we love. It's time to bang. Oh, yeah, you are looking live. The best damn combat sports show, period. It's one day out from UFC 308, and this here right now is Morning Kombat, Friday, October 25th, 2024. Your boy, BC Brian Campbell on the ones and twos. That's my co-host, the best damn combat sports analyst in the game today, Luke Thomas. And Luke, it's Max versus Ilia Topuria versus Holloway, the featherweight title. We've been waiting all year for this jam. How fired up are you?
Buddy, I can't even tell you, like, how many times, well, we haven't had Friday shows for very long, but just in general, how many times have we had weekends leading up, or Fridays or whatever, leading up to fights where we're like, yeah, there's some good fights this weekend, there's some fun fights? No, dude. No, dude. This isn't a slate of good fights. It's a slate of great fights with, on top, the very best fight that the sport can offer, at least on paper. I am fired up in ways I haven't been in quite a long time. Let's fucking go.
Yes. And if you can't love the main event alone, that co-main event, Luke, is for a non-title fight. That's about as great as it gets on the pay-per-view level, main or co-main, when we're talking about Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. So much to get into with that. We will also, for the first time in a long ass while today, be looking at you fans. We're going to do dead wrong so we can make sure you correct us when we misstep on the air, which is often. We're also going to hit fan submissions for the first time in a long time. I know Average Joe Art's been hitting me up. I know, look, you know Saul from Louisville, right? Him and his wife are they're on a European tour on Instagram at the moment. He said he's got some pics he wants to send in. So Morning Kombat at gmail.com, of course, is that email address for all that good stuff. We'll be hitting that at the end of the show today. And a reminder on our merch here as I'm drinking AG1. Yes, I still use that product out of this great mug. You can go to morningkombat.store right now, pick up some of our merch, classic items, the Average Joe Art crossover, Factory Town MMA, Dead Luke. We got them all right there. Get 10% off using our code LIVE10, LIVE10. Anything else we're supposed to promote or prop up here?
Our socials.
Luke, congratulations. 200K on the live channel. I heard you finally, there it is. I heard you told a fecal story that was epic. That's what I hear.
Well, they had said when I hit 100K, someone's like, what are you going to do for 200? I was like, oh, I'll tell you a really embarrassing story. And, you know, that I wasn't even sure I'd ever reach 200. And then finally the day came, and this was the day. And I, in fact, told a story that was, it was true and really embarrassing. So if you're into that kind of thing, I got you covered.
Luke finally coming clean after all these years. Great to hear. I'd also like to introduce the third member of our team today on the ones and twos officially. It is Long Island Luke Nocita of the Main Card Minute Pod. Luke had a nice close-up on the BCX channel this week. Long Island Luke, how's everything in your life?
It's doing great. Video did great views. Luke, did you check it out?
Motherfucker, that's like asking me if I watched gay porn. Of course I didn't check it out.
Yeah, Dakota Cockring was in the main event, Luke. Okay, you should have been there. It's great. Long Island Luke, I'm sure your betting podcast, as you're the unofficial betting advisor to Morning Kombat, the Main Card Minute, you guys fired up for tomorrow. I heard that they changed the start time to the early prelims for 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm pretty hyped. I was gonna just do the main card. I'm actually doing the full card watch along tomorrow, so we're starting bright and early. 10 a.m. wake and bake. BC goes already. Yeah, so tune in.
Oh, Bong
this is the official symbol of that podcast. Like, you know how there's the Jordan logo or whatever?
Yeah.
Yours is this.
I got to get on that. That's a good call.
There it is. Luke Nocita of Aussie fame in Long Island and more. But that's about it.
Can I tell you something real quickly? I bought Tukey a pair of Jordans for school.
Wow.
And she thought, well, they were kind of on sale. They weren't too expensive. And so I got them at Dick's Sporting Goods, and she really liked them. And I was like, all the kids at school are going to think these are really cool. And then she came back from school. I was like, what'd the kids say about your shoes? And they're like, they hated them. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? I said, why? She goes, they didn't have lights on them. I'm like, well, you know, the kids at your school are morons. I mean, let's just be honest. They don't know what's good. So
You got to get her some like old school British Knights or something that have like the light up and the.
Dude,
you know.
they don't want Jordans. They want bells and whistles and Crocs. They don't give a shit, you know.
Yeah, shout out to Tukey for representing though, just the same right there. Happy to see that. Yeah, that's about it here. We're regular dads living regular lives. Only we're fired the hell up about mixed martial arts. Some of us
let me take a ceremonial pull of this goddamn mango strawberry vape. Shouts to Michael Chiesa who makes fun of me for this.
Oh yeah, why would he though? Why would he? Look at that closer right there. Oh yeah,
to begin.
Yeah, it is time. It's time for the game. Hey, let's get into a topic number one. You guessed it. UFC 308 goes down tomorrow. Main cards start 3 p.m. Eastern, Abu Dhabi, ESPN Plus pay-per-view. And of course, the featherweight championship at stake. The breakout star of the next era, Ilia Topuria will make the first defense of his title, fresh off, of course, of knocking out Alexander Volkanovski in the second round as he welcomes BMF champion, former featherweight king, living legend, future Hall of Famer, Max Holloway. Before we even get 1 second close later in this show, I will update the odds from DraftKings as we speak. Ilia Topuria, a minus 238 favorite, plus 195. Holloway is your underdog. Luke Thomas, you good with the odds on where we are right now, one day out?
I mean, as much of a believer in Ilia as I am, I think that's a little hot. That's a little strong. That's a lot. Again, the betting odds are designed to induce betting to a degree, but I think this is, I don't know if 50-50 is quite the right word, but this is anybody's fight to win. I think Ilia's got a lot of momentum and a lot of ability, but I really don't. I think there are some Ilia supporters who think he's just going to melt Max. I don't think that is realistic. I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag out, tough ass fight. And I'll say this. I very much take Max's chances seriously, even as a believer in Ilia.
Indeed. A legend who so often has turned back our thoughts of maybe he's past it or this is too difficult of a matchup. He just did that with Justin Gaethje. He constantly has done that in this division to everyone not named Alexander Volkanovski, going back to that 2013 loss to Conor McGregor. So much at stake. The two just made weight earlier this morning, 145 pounds each. And the ceremonial weigh-ins just ended a couple minutes ago, but we do have a face-off from their press conference this week. As you can see, a lot of respect between the two of them, but also a lot of intensity. Holloway with the height advantage, but we know what Topuria brings there. Luke, is it safe to say Topuria the more well-rounded fighter?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a much better ground game. Max has got a good ground game. You just don't really see a lot of it. We saw some offensive grappling, obviously, in the Yair Rodriguez fight. But yes, I actually think that Max has more tools on the feet. He's got a more adaptable style. But in terms of the full breadth and depth of MMA ability, I'd go with Ilia. But the question you have to ask yourself is that even going to be relevant in this particular fight? And there's maybe, but in all likelihood, I think this one's probably going to be won or lost on the feet, right? I mean, that seems likely.
Yeah, indeed. Before we get much further into the breakdown of it, things got, like I said, rather cordial but competitive. We did have one little flurry between the two of them at Thursday's press conference or Wednesday's press conference. Let's check it out right now.
Just tune in, man. Tune in. I think he didn't deserve that kind of moment. He had that moment with Josh Emmett, and someone shot, and someone took someone down, someone hold someone down. So
if I deserve it.
The moment needs to be
point to the ground. And
brother, we're adults. Let me talk. We're adults, brother. Let me talk.
Down.
Calm down. Let me talk.
Stay quiet.
Let me
Stay
talk,
quiet.
brother. Let me
I
talk,
don't
brother.
even ask you if I deserve it or not. I will point to the ground, and you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you just try to stay another fight.
Stay in the middle, shake the hand, and you stay in the middle. If not, run away. I will cut you anyways. I will cut you.
We're days away.
Take you
days away.
Trust me.
We are days away.
Trust me.
You're
gonna wake up from a long
days
sleep.
away, brother. We're just
You will
days
see
away,
2
brother.
more days.
Be an adult. Let me talk.
Like to say.
Be an adult.
We'll find out.
Calm down. Yeah, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. Exactly.
Let's go. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Ilia.
See, Luke, I thought that was you and I arguing over who talked over each other right there. What do you make of what they were arguing about, which is Topuria? We remember the face-off they had there, saying the first 10 seconds of the fight, he's going to point to the ground. Max saying, like, it's not the DMF, the dumbest MF, or I'm not going to exchange with you. Do you think we'll see that to open the fight?
You probably will, because Topuria seems like a stubborn guy. My biggest read from that press conference is that I think you and many other people, including Max Holloway, find Ilia Topuria very annoying. It seemed like, not like in his head. I don't mean that exactly. Max is just too far past that for that kind of thing to matter. But as a general observation, I don't think he meshes well with Ilia. Not many do, obviously, in the featherweight division, but I do actually think Ilia is going to do that. I don't think Max is going to bite, nor should he. Honestly, someone asked me this, I think a couple of weeks ago, BC, which was if Ilia were to point to the ground and then they both engaged and either one won that way, they asked me, would you be disappointed? And the answer is yes. Yes, I would be disappointed. What the fuck is the point of getting the two of the very best guys in the sport and like one of the most consequential title fights in some time, just slugging it out in the first 10 seconds to get a win? No, that would be a waste. I would not want to see that. No.
This is about Ilia trying to establish pre-fight dominance between the two of them. And look, I said this, of course, when he wrote on his social media accounts ahead of the Volk fight, featherweight champion, unbeaten record. It felt like he was putting the cart before the horse. But Luke, as much as we've played up this sort of fun rivalry on this show of you being pro Topuria, and then look, on the other side, it's hard for anyone not to be a Max Holloway fan. I do understand who Topuria is. I wrote a big feature about him on CBS Sports this week about the idea of him potentially being the next big thing, almost the guy of anyone who's ready to pick up the mantle from McGregor and that long lineage of great stars, because not only could this fight catapult Topuria with, all those different countries behind him. He's the first Georgian and Spanish UFC champion in history. But I think if he wins this fight, Luke, and let's say he did it like he did to Volk, we're not just talking about fighter of the year. We're talking about potential pound for pound king, which is rare in this time when you can get somebody who's the face of the sport and the sport's best fighter at the same time. So I don't think Topuria is too cocky or anything like that. I think the more you listen to him, you realize he's a thinker. He almost manifests the success in his life. Very, very much a visionary in that regard. And I think all you have to do is listen to that kind of babyface, inspirational speech that he gave in the cage after beating Volkanovski that shows you he's here by hard work and belief, not by anything else. But Luke, tell me if I'm wrong like this. As a potential commercial face, if he gets there, he almost is perfect because you can read it as being too cocky or this guy's an a-hole, so you can look at him as a heel, or you can just the same look at it as inspirational. He kind of plays to all audiences. I have to give it up. Topuria is sort of the perfect guy at the perfect moment if he can break through to become that next great star. No question about it.
That's right. If he can break through, I think he's got a lot of ingredients to be a big star. Obviously, the push he'll get from notable figures with Inside Europe will be a big deal for him. But this is the basic point that I had made previously. I mean, BC, we have to rewind. I mean, I know there's a lot of fans who are relatively new to the sport, but we were there when, for example, Volkanovski beat Max for the very first time. I can understand why people had some difficulty accepting that Volk had won. There is some debate about the scoring. But the point I want to make was after Volk had won that contest, he was reviled. He was reviled. And even in the second fight, there was still some dispute, although that one was also kind of close, especially with the way that Max had started. But the point I'm trying to make is, dude, Volk was not this guy that everybody loved from day one. No one even knew he was going to be eventually. Like, who was the person 2 years before he became pound for pound in the sport, number one? Who were the people saying he was going to be number one? I thought he was good.
Right here.
I didn't think he was going to do that. The point I'm trying to make is, you are the villain until you beat all the heroes. And once you do that, you just become the hero. You become the guy that is the guy. And it's this weird process where all of a sudden everyone just flips. Now, again, to your point, he has his work cut out for him Saturday in order to do that. But if we live in a world where, let's say, Topuria wins, I think a lot of this negativity around him will simply melt away and folks will begin to see him in a different light. Conversely, if he loses, it's going to compound a lot of the existing tension that exists around him.
Luke, honest question, was it tough after being a Max guy and you love Max for so long to get up on that Topuria train, even if that train has to run through Max?
Yes. I mean, in fact, I was also asked this on my live chat, BC. Someone was like, oh, how sad are you going to be if Max wins? And I'm like, not at all. Like, not at all. It is impossible. It is impossible to cheer against Max Holloway. Like, what would even be the case, right? A guy who is a family man, who has earned everything he's gotten, who, let's be clear, we were there in Vegas at UFC 276 after that drubbing that Volkanovski gave him, and we kind of all thought that was going to be the end of his career. His management got changed at that whole time. And then, BC, a funny thing just kind of happened along the way. He refused to die. He beat Arnold Allen and Yair Rodriguez and Korean Zombie and Calvin Kattar and go down the list, then goes up a weight class and gets not his best win, because I think stopping Jose Aldo in back-to-back fights is really, like, that's just hard to top, but gets one of the best wins of his career, one of the best knockouts in UFC heavyweight history. And now he finds himself on the precipice of something that so few could even ever dream of, with nearly 2,000 days expiring between the last time he held his title and now potentially getting this one back. Dude, what would be the argument to be mad at a guy like that? What would be the argument to being like, oh, this is a sad thing because another guy I like also lost? I'd be sad for Ilia. I would be delighted for Max. I'll just add, if Barcelona wins on Saturday, yes, I will be legitimately pissed and upset. Yes.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. And just to correct you slightly, the Kattar and Yair fights came before the third Volk one, but it's part of an enduring theme that Max has reinvented. He reinvents himself after the first two Volkanovski losses, after the third one, which led to the recent 3-fight win streak. Don't forget about when he had to pull out of that fight against Ortega, and then he comes back later that summer and looks great. And also after losing to Poirier for the interim lightweight title, there was a lot of questions, and he came back against Frankie Edgar. That's just what he does, reinvent himself. If he can do this one more time, we're talking about rare levels of history, the idea that he can become champion again and continue on this run. But I caught up with Max about a month ago in the opening stages of the Brian Campbell experience and got to pick his brain about Luke putting the Adesanya toy in the bin, picking up the Topuria one, and what he felt about that.
I heard Luke wasn't too happy, so
I think Luke was in his feelings. But Max, let's be very honest. Luke has been back in Ilia Topuria as if
the whole
he's
time, bro.
The second
the
coming.
Whole time, bro.
What do you feel about that? Come on, what do you feel about that?
I mean, it is what it is, you know. When there's a new flavor of the month, people always got to try it, you know. So at the end of the day, I ain't even mad, you know. For Luke, last time I checked, you can tell him when I was Ilia's age, I think I had a couple title defenses already. So it is what it is.
To be fair, that flavor tastes pretty good, though. I've come around on Ilia, Luke. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know. And again, Max is, Max is a joy to cover. You know, it's a joy to cover. And again, Ilia is trying to make this whole thing his story, which he might in the end, right? But just for Max to be back in this position at all is insane. It's insane that he's here. So all I hope, BC, and I mean this truly, we always say this, dude, the fight game is so unfair. It's so difficult. It's so hard to get these opportunities. May the best man win. And if that ends up being Max, then it ends up being Max, and I have absolutely zero problem with it.
All right, one more clip we're going to get to before we break this fight down, and you referenced the Madrid-Barcelona football rivalry. Here's Max getting involved in that to a degree.
Just for people to understand, what you have here is the Barcelona kit they gave
I got gifted
right?
from Barcelona.
Yeah.
And they gave me the number 9 for striker. Because they know.
So Barcelona is playing Real Madrid on Saturday, pretty much at the same time you guys are going to be fighting. So he supports Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Now you're wearing you have the Barcelona kit. So
yeah, Barcelona kit. So I guess the Barcelona go 2-0 Saturday night. Let's go.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank
Max.
you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
I didn't realize he got gifted that from FC Barcelona themselves. So they're in on this rivalry as well.
It's a bit, dude, I got to tell you, this is great for MMA. You got two of the very biggest clubs in the biggest rivalry, basically in all of sports, maybe certainly up there. And they're now taking part in an MMA contest. Like, again, fuck Barcelona, but this is a great thing for MMA. Like, I'm actually kind of happy. I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined this would happen. And so it's kind of cool to see, actually, even though Max, what are you doing? Fuck Barcelona.
So is that a regular season game Saturday that's going to be on at the same time as the paper?
Yeah, they both play in the same domestic league, so they have to play each other a few times. But every time they do, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Indeed. All right, let's break down this fight here. Max is the underdog, but we know what he brings to the table. What do you make of the rhetoric this week from Topuria that not only will he become the first man to finish Max, and let's remember, Max has never even been knocked down, or let me not say finished. Max was finished in his UFC debut by submission against Dustin Poirier, never knocked down, never stopped on his feet. So when Topuria has upgraded during the press conference this week to KO1 as the prediction, your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, that's ludicrous. I appreciate the confidence. You're going to need it to fight Max Holloway. I just don't buy it. I mean, listen, there is an argument to make that a guy like Max, particularly remember, he was at 145, 145, then goes to 55, and his punching power was noticeably better, although that's something he'd been working on before that. And then he got a little bit more muscle mass to go to 55. Like, remember, I think when he made 55, he still looked a little bit drained, but that's not because it was a bad cut, but because he was. So my understanding is like from the folks around him, like they didn't just want to be like, oh, we're going to keep a 45 body and then just cut less weight. They wanted to get him to be a 55 body, right? Whereas in the Dustin Poirier fight, my understanding is they didn't do that. The second Poirier fight, right? Sure. Which was where you were there for that one. And they just kept him as a 145 guy, and they just cut less weight for that one. And it didn't go all that well against Poirier, obviously. I mean, Max made a strong account of himself, but Poirier got his hand raised in the end. They didn't want to do that this time. But now he's going back down to 45, which, again, he's done that before, but not after building a little bit more muscle mass to go along with it. So I think it's actually a pretty interesting question. And people have often said, yes, someone will have a great chin until they don't. I remember Nogueira having, the most amazing, like absolutely insane chin you ever seen in your life until just one day it wasn't. So there is that on the table, but until I really see somebody do it, I just don't think you can count on that. In fact, it would be a huge, huge mistake of Ilia to think I'm just going to go in there and blow the doors off this guy because I blow the doors off everyone else's. I blow the doors off everyone else. But you see, I'm not going to say that Max Holloway has a Canelo chin because I think Canelo's chin is literally like one of the best in combat sports fucking history. But his chin is absurd. It's absurd. It is foolish to think you can go in there and just melt that guy with your punching power, even if it goes up to 55, which you did against Jai Herbert, because hello, Max has fought 55ers who were punishing strikers, and he lived to tell the tale, and by the way, put one of their lights out. So I don't buy that. I buy that Ilia can win, absolutely. I do not buy he's going to melt him, especially within a round. No, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let me ask you a critical question about this. I believe in the latest reincarnations of Max, how he bounced back from the first two Volkanovski losses. Then again, how he bounced back from the third one when he got bloodied, beat up. It wasn't even a close fight. But do you think there's any element of fool's gold in the way that he beat Justin Gaethje, in which everyone's like, oh my God, rightfully so, Max is back. He's back in the top 10 pound for pound. After that fight, he was a contender suddenly for the lightweight title, the featherweight title, defending the BMF title, like everything Max was back. But because Gaethje is a little bit slower, a lot less precise than Topuria as a striker, as it pertains to this matchup, do we have to be careful not to fall into some Max fool's gold that say, look at what he did to Gaethje at 155 as an underdog. It's such a different matchup against Topuria.
Well, in fairness, Max was, here's the thing. If Max doesn't point to the ground in the last 10 seconds and doesn't get KO'd, right? So that somehow the last 10 seconds just go whatever. Dude, Max wins that contest. You know what I mean? Max was winning that fight no matter what. So I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. Like, I think, okay. So after Max beat Justin, I spoke to Ivan Flores. Ivan Flores is a longtime striking coach. And one thing he told me was like they were really working on, like I had kind of noticed that like the power punching of Max was a little bit different, not just of course, obviously in the Gaethje fight, but even before that, you can kind of tell he's putting hands on people and it was having a much more dramatic effect. And I definitely think that is real. I think that Max's reinvention in the other cases, he was able to get back on the horse and, get the win. And then the Rodriguez win using a more well-rounded ability in order to do it. Although that was a hellacious, tough fight. The point I'm trying to make is this is a different Max. This is a better Max. Like whoever Ilia beats on Saturday, it's not the Max that lost to Volk the third time. It's a much improved version. Or conversely, if Ilia loses, he didn't lose to the guy that Volk kind of spanked at UFC 276. It's a again, hard to say vastly because it's not like, you know, it's not like the beginning of someone's career versus the end where there's like this huge difference. It's still just a matter of a couple of years basically. But nevertheless, they went back to the drawing board after that fight. And they really said, hey, what are some things we can do differently? And I think you've seen some elements of that along the way. So I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question, BC, except to say, I think that when you reconcile with who Max is today, Ilia's task is, in my judgment, a tougher one than what Volk had in their third fight, in part because he had already faced him twice, but because this is a bit of a different guy with, I would say, much better and noticeable firepower along the way.
Yeah, and I think for any fear I had in recent weeks of seeing Max kind of sucked out in interviews, particularly that Kevin Iole one, he did make the weight at 145. He looked good. Some people were putting his last 4 fights in comparison to see how he looked on the scale.
The same.
You know, coming back down from 55 doesn't seem to be, you know, even though that fight was back in April, it seems to be like he's done it right. So the question here is, Luke, has Max ever had to deal with this exact combination in his featherweight prime of somebody who not only has the knockout power in both hands, but you're going to add in the speed, the footwork, the IQ, the way that he showed that poise and patience to wait for that opening against Volkanovski that he sniffed out earlier in round 1, and then look at the ease, almost the precision that he delivered it. Have we seen Max, who we've seen him against fast guys, we've seen him against sluggers, have we seen him have to face this complete package of a striker yet?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I'm looking up and down his record, and obviously he's got, I mean, his record's just insane. Jose Aldo's obviously, you know, I mean, absurd. You know, so it's hard to be like, oh, well, Ilia's better than Jose. That's not really the argument that I'm making. You're making a different one, which is styles make fights. How do their styles compare to one another? I will say that I do think Ilia is different than a lot of these guys. I mean, you were talking about someone who's got just ferocious power, very good boxing, incorporates a lot of feinting. I think his defensive awareness has also, by the way, like we always focus on Ilia's offense. I think his defense, which by the way was one of his more glaring weaknesses early in his MMA career, and to an extent, obviously, still is a relevant concern. But if you're asking me like what's gotten better, yes, his boxing has obviously gotten significantly better, but his defensive awareness and his defensive responsibility has also gotten significantly better along the way. Then you add in the fact that this was a guy who was basically a wrestler / grappler to start, and then just kind of discovered he was maybe even better at striking along the way. It's hard to know if that grappling and that wrestling will even play a role here, but such that you have to like count the threats. Jose Aldo was never really going to take you down. He's got absurd takedown defense, right? But he's never really like a threat to take you down. I mean, consider the Bryce Mitchell fight. Now, again, Max is a lot better than Bryce Mitchell, but I'm just sort of pointing out something. How did he get him down in that last round? The second round, I think he finished him off. It was a 3-punch combination that knocked him down. And then from there, he went to work with ultimately I think it was the arm triangle he finished him with in the end. But he didn't actually go for a takedown. Now, again, Max is hard to hurt. You have a cat on your shoulder. This motherfucker is up in, dude. This cat wants to bang you. I mean,
no. He just wants to own and control me, Luke. Keep going. I'm enjoying this.
Okay.
308 talk.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is I do think Ilia represents a very unique kind of threat where, in all likelihood, it will be won or lost on the feet. But he has such great ability, both offensively and defensively, more so offensively on the ground, in ways that doesn't seem like the first order priority of what you have to prepare for, but he can easily overwhelm people there should he want to. Max is obviously a tougher nut to crack in that regard, but it's a lot to be ready for Max.
All right, but if you ask Ilia the differences between the two of them, he regularly brings up the fact that he doesn't think Max has evolved at all, which seems unfair, but what he's basically trying to say is that in his eyes, the Max featherweight prime is the same Max today in terms of danger level. And then Topuria, of course, brings up his own well-rounded game. The fact that he initially was a wrestler, the fact that he, I mean, look, I don't know if you saw on UFC Countdown, the gym and cryo chamber and people in white lab coats that are inside of Topuria's house. Like, he's not just the next generation future star athlete. It seems like he's doing things. I mean, it's so the opposite of Max, like, training over Zoom during the pandemic and doing things like Rocky IV bare bones style. separate from that about his house, how much of an advantage will this ground game be in this fight? Because it's not like we see modern day Max Holloway being taken down, gassed out, and dominated on the ground against anybody.
This is why I don't think it's like you. I mean, if you're Max, right, and you're thinking about Ilia's ground game, what would be the appropriate level of caution you would want to take? Well, first of all, Max's takedown defense is very good. And more importantly, his distance management is also pretty good, which makes the takedown defense typically even better. We haven't even talked about it. I think Max's movement, his pivoting, sometimes his stance switching to get a better, more dominant angle at the right distance is also something I think Ilia might have. I think Ilia is going to have a lot of trouble with that. Actually, that to me is like the biggest problem he has to solve is the geography of Max.
Yeah.
But if you're Max, like you have to know if this somehow ends up on the ground, you're not going to win there, right? On the feet, can Max win the fight? Yes. I mean, there's just really no question about that. Can Max win this fight if for whatever reason Ilia is able to take and keep it there? I just don't see that as realistic whatsoever. So you have a pretty big imperative if you're Max Holloway that whatever you do, and this again to an extent might affect his kicking game, right? Because Justin Gaethje is not going to grab a kick and then go to the ground. Topuria might. And again, will he go for the sub? Maybe, but he's got terrifying ground and pound too, from what we've seen. So it could change some of the ways in which he engages on the feet in order to mitigate risk about going to the ground.
Interesting. So if we say the flip side on that, if I'm taking the pulse of the experts who are saying, look, you still got to favor Topuria here, but good Lord, can we not count out Max? Obviously, people will point to the experience, but I mean, Topuria has beaten tough names. He's climbed the ladder in the requisite time frame, and oh boy, look what he did against Volk. No matter what Volk was coming off of, that was such an impressive breakthrough performance. The things I've heard said, Luke, and I want to get your opinion on that, come down to cardio. Not that Topuria has shown bad cardio, but the idea that Max has gone 5 rounds so many times, if he can survive the early storm against Topuria, whose knockout prediction began in the 3rd round, like we said, now he's talking about 1st round. Is there a distinct advantage for Holloway in those championship rounds? Should we get there, in your opinion?
I mean, there is simply, like, if you're trying to identify where Max retains advantages, dude, how is this even a question? Max is so much more battle tested than Ilia. It's absurd to even try to say Ilia has anything related to that. Now, that doesn't mean Ilia will fold there. You can't rely on that either. But if you're just saying, who do we know can go a hard 5, even where he's getting beat up and losing, like let's say the Dustin Poirier fight, the second one of those, who do we know can just stay relevant and stay a dangerous threat for 25 minutes? It's easily Max Holloway. Like, there's just no question about it. So I definitely give the advantage considerably should it go late, or I should say the later it goes, the more Max should feel some degree of comfort. I think that's a good way to put it, I hope. But I do question a little bit what people are saying about, oh, you got to weather a storm and then Ilia might fade. He might fade, but I don't know this notion about an early storm. Well, hold on. Yeah. Let me make the point Consider if I can. In the fight with Volk, I went back and I double-checked this. Topuria lost the 1st round on all 3 judges' scorecards. Now, it wasn't like a rock'em sock'em round. It was a bit of a feeling out round for the most part. But the point I'm trying to make is, and I said this to our friend, She Loves the Gloves, I got a little bit of Tank Davis vibes from him in that fight because I went back and I watched it, where he was trying to set patterns the whole time to get not only reactions from Volk, but for Volk to get used to those patterns. And it wasn't really until midway through before the stoppage happened where he began to then change those patterns, right? So he wasn't trying to blitz him out in the first. Now, again, he might point to the ground and who all knows. But I'm trying to point out there isn't a lot of evidence that he, like, starts strong and then his game is not as good late. Like, he actually has been pretty measured throughout. So I can believe and accept that if the fight goes longer, Max is just going to know how to step on the gas in certain ways that perhaps Ilia is unaccustomed to. And if Max is in Ilia's face, this is going to be a pressure situation he simply hasn't had before. Max has. I just challenge the idea that you have to get through the first 2 rounds. Like, that's a Khamzat situation. You have to get through the first 2 rounds and then it fades. That's not an Ilia situation.
Well, the idea built behind that was that Ilia throws such heavy shots, such heavy combinations that should Max commit early on to, let's say, an elusive style, switching stances, constantly, exiting and almost making Topuria chase, could he, and then, while also absorbing some shots and sort of playing the game, could that tire Topuria out faster? Could Max, almost do some like rope-a-dope type thing to really leave his tank as heavy as possible for rounds 3, 4, and 5 to really start to turn the tables and put on pressure? Because Luke, tell me if I'm wrong. If I look back at that great shootout at UFC 236 that we mentioned when Max moved up and fought Dustin for the interim title, the biggest thing I'll say is sitting cage side. Not only was that an amazing action fight, but it had the unfortunate nature of having to follow Adesanya Gastelum, which is, the greatest fight that's ever happened, apparently, if you listen to me long enough. Max tried to almost match Poirier power for power, combo for combo, the majority of that fight. You could tell early that he didn't have the firepower to overcome Poirier. What if we see Max go the exact opposite route of the game plan he had there and really make Topuria have to chase? Is that something that can work?
Yes. I think it's important we just say like what this fight hinges on, or at least what are the major fault lines that the winner will be the one who figures this out. Partly, I think the jab. Max's jab is fantastic. It is continuous. It sets range. It sets up combinations. It disrupts rhythm. It sets his own. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Ilia is somewhat similar in that regard, although he puts power punching combinations together a little bit more along those regards. But I think who establishes the jab is going to be a big one here. But I think the biggest one, if I can be honest with you, is not that, although that's the two are related. It is geography. Notice a couple of things. One, all of Ilia's finishes, even the great Volkanovski one, happened up against the fence. It's not like he's got a bunch of KOs right out there in the open, right? He's got like this, he does have melting power, but it's usually like 1, 2, and then the third one comes. And that's usually the thudding one that really gets, or the fourth one. That's the one where he's kind of like stepping through it, right? And he needs something of a semi-stationary target and a little bit of momentum to really get that power in there. That's going to be hard to do for Max. I think Max has good cagecraft. He does some lateral movement, but it's a lot of jab, angle off, jab, angle off, jab, switch stances, catch you on the other side, a la Marvin Hagler. I've actually made a whole video about this. So that's a big one for me that I think you really have to pay attention to. You've got this movement, and you've got this guy where Ilia, where he's got good power, but it seems, historically speaking, to be a function of his ability to crowd a guy and hold him there, rather than somebody who just in open space can time somebody and then knock their block off. That is to me, Ilia Topuria's central challenge. Can he do that long enough to either stop Max, which I don't think he will, or can he do that long enough to win at least 3 rounds on the judges' scorecards after it goes to a decision? That's a tough task. If anyone can do it, I do think it is Ilia, but that is where, to me, the fight is won and lost.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's see if Max can do that. How much of a kicking element do you think we see in here? Because look, there are big time fights that commitment to calf strikes early can completely change the program. But if you commit to that, you can be open to big shots. Do you see either guy, whether it is to the calves or really trying to target head kicks, that this becomes part of the matchup here?
Head kicks, I don't know. I mean, there has been some video evidence we've seen this week where maybe Ilia doesn't respond as well to somebody fighting out of a southpaw stance. There is some evidence of that. I don't think that's crazy. And by the way, Max can fight out of the southpaw stance should he need to. Again, I think his striking game it's less dangerous in the short run, but it's more dangerous in the long run because he can adapt and modulate it as need be. Whereas, it's like, oh, Ilia, we need you to fight behind the jab in your opposite stance. Can he do that? Probably not. Can Max do that? Yes, he probably can. So that makes a big difference when I think about that. But you're asking about the kicking. This is an interesting one because you saw those spinning back kicks that he was landing on Gaethje, right? And you're like, well, will he do that against Ilia? Well, on the one hand, Ilia might do a lot of like sidestepping both to get out of the way and then blitz position to catch him. He could also catch the leg and run him down. That's another thing he could do. So you have to be careful with that. On the other hand, what is one of Ilia's favorite things, dude? It's the level change foot feint. He's always doing that level change front foot feint. You're going to open yourself up to those kinds of kicks potentially if you do it long enough. And if Max is not biting on the feints, that could be a big problem for him. Conversely, though, I do think that people are sleeping a little bit on the leg kicking game of Ilia. Like, he took Bryce Mitchell off of his feet for a second with how hard his leg kicks are. And Max is not known as a big checker. You know what I mean? And so if Ilia can take out the legs of Max Holloway, and that reduces his jab or his ability to meaningfully pivot or change angles or even just lateral movement, well, now he becomes easier to corner. Again, these are all big ifs, but these are the battles that I think have to be won and lost in order for someone to get their hand raised.
Oh, I'm fired up. This is going to be such a sophisticated striking duel. I don't think it goes to the ground at all. All right.
This is why being like, oh, let's point to the ground in the first. Don't fucking do that. I mean, what if they get to the last 10 seconds? Okay. All right. That's the Max Holloway special. You got to play ball in his court, so to speak. But the first 10 seconds, get the fuck out of here with that. Who wants to see that crap?
No, I want to see 5 rounds of brilliance and ebbs and flows of momentum. I don't want to see a controversial decision. But look at it. Let me ask you, are we more likely to see a finish here or a pretty even duel that may come down to the last round or one sequence here where one guy gets his hand raised?
I think you are much more likely to get the latter. I just, again, someone's chin is great until it's not, but until it's not, I just am not going to believe that Max is going to go quietly that way. I really don't believe that. Again, it could happen. Obviously, it could happen, but my best guess is this one absolutely goes the full 5. And that's why I think both guys have their hands full here. I just don't see. I could see Max putting him away too. It's not like I think that's out of the realm of possibility with volume punching. But even then, like in the first 2 rounds, that seems unlikely. It seems like even if he gets that, it would be inside the championship rounds, right?
I mean, it's crazy. Excuse me. If Max did this, and look, I think there's the fool's gold element I was referencing earlier. If you watch the highlight reel knockouts of Korean Zombie and Justin Gaethje, is Max isn't necessarily that striker, and certainly not in a one-punch variety. But even if a stoppage would come in the method you said, through the barrage of volume, particularly late in a fight, if Topuria is fatigued at all, you're going to get Rumble in the Jungle comparisons, not comparing Max to Muhammad Ali in terms of what they've accomplished, but that's exactly that same scenario in so many ways. That's why a victory of any kind here from Max to regain the title is such a story and takes him already as an all-timer and just boosts him up. But dude, there are Rumble in the Jungle parallels if something like that happened. You can't deny that.
Yes. I think I have a feeling. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I just feel like this is one of those fights where years later we're going to be like, do you remember when that happened? Whatever the result might be, to be perfectly honest. Like, either Max climbs this insane mountain that he should never even been here, but he's here because he's Max, or Ilia is going to remind everyone, my favorite parlance, BC, what time it is and like whose era it actually is. And so it's either this incredible comeback story, is a hard way to put it, but something of a comeback story, BC, for Max Holloway, or the final planting of the flag that this is the Topuria era. But either way, it will be defining, both potentially career defining and era defining, in historic ways. It's a historic fight, no less than that.
It really is. Would this be a bigger win on the flip side for Georgia or Spain, or am I barking up an unnecessary tree?
Say that again.
Would Topuria beating Max be a bigger win for Georgia or Spain? Or how about Germany, Luke? Because that guy was born in Germany, but it seems like he's ignoring it like you in India, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of I don't know anything about India other than I was born there. I you know what? I think both sides will claim, but you know, it's so funny. Like when he won, it was like, this is a victory for Spain. And then you see like the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi, and it's like, you know, this is a victory for Georgia. And it's like, it's I don't know how to answer that. It's a victory for whoever wants to make it their victory, you know?
But I think the argument for Topuria's star power, particularly in this era where we can argue UFC doesn't need stars as much, doesn't rely on them. And you can even go as far as saying they're maybe not going out of their way to cultivate it in the way they used to because of everything we talk about every episode about the ESPN era. But Luke, Topuria could be the star that they need at this moment, which would answer that question of who's it bigger for, Spain, because that is the market UFC has wanted to get into. And now you've got Dana at the press conference saying, look, it's tough to get into Spain because all their buildings are back up, but we're going to either Madrid or Barcelona in 25. Does that happen without Topuria? Probably not.
No, there's no chance. And by the way, it would be kind of a mistake to go to Barcelona with Topuria. I mean, it's a little hard to explain, but and I told you guys before the show, but like Barcelona and the they don't consider themselves Spanish. I don't know how to explain this to people. Like they don't. I mean, they're part of the Spanish country. They speak Spanish there. But like a buddy of mine just moved there, and his wife is Peruvian and obviously speaks Spanish. And they were telling me like they'll go out in town and people will just refuse to speak Spanish to them. They'll only speak Catalan, which is its own little language that they speak there. Like they're very independent of that. Obviously, it's a beautiful city. The city of Barcelona is incredible. I've been there a number of times. It's beautiful. But yes, to your point, like you can't go there without Ilia, but I'm not even sure with Ilia it makes a lot of sense to go there. They should go to Madrid and call it a day, you know?
So you're saying that area has like a Quebec/Texas feel where they think that they're different and they want out?
They are different. They're not like the people from Madrid. They're same with the
Florida,
Basque region.
Dude,
don't you remember? You may not remember this because you were probably too busy doing whippets in the Arby's parking lot. But like, dude, the Basque region used to have like they were separatists at war. Like they were dropping bombs all over Spain. Like that was a real thing. So like even if you go to the Basque country, they speak their own language up there. That's also not Spanish. So Spain's like a really weird amalgam of a lot of different people. And like, yeah, it is a country. It is a whole, and you can't get through the whole place with Spanish, but it's a lot of different, interesting mixed groups that are not all together at all. I'm telling you, if you ever go to Barcelona, they have like this yellow flag and it's got a star in the middle. It's in every window you go down, and it's their flag that the parliament there has tried to separate from the country numerous times. Their leaders in the last couple of years were in freaking exile. Like they had to flee the country. So like Dana's like, yeah, we'll go to Barcelona with this. I'm like, you got to be careful with that a little bit.
Interesting. Do they even get tattoos of the flag on their arms? So I would never get a Connecticut flag on me, Luke. I mean, Connecticut's great, but Luke, quickly before we get into our prediction on the main here, would it be safe to say that 85% of the people in your life that you call close friends are married to a woman from South America?
No, that's a little strong, but I would say 50%.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it, Luke. We both are. It seems like we're both leaning toward a decision here, but I'll give you the floor. Who wins and how Saturday night main event 308?
I think Topuria wins by decision. That is my predictions are no good, but such as they exist, I think that is the most likely possibility. But I'm not one of these doofuses that thinks he can just go in there and melt people with his power like he's Thanos and can just snap his finger. That's not what's going on here. I think it's going to be a tough battle. Max is going to be on his horse a little bit, especially early, to really deny Ilia the ability to get meaningful offense going, and might bank some rounds in the process. And so while I also agree Max will have a series of experiential advantages late, I do wonder about that weight cut if he's slowly taken damage over the course of it, whether to the body or to the leg. And I think in the end, Ilia does find a way to score the more meaningful offense to take 3 rounds to 2. Give me Ilia 48-47.
So I've come around to Ilia completely, as you should when you watch the tape, when you watch the interviews, when you really do the deep dive study. I think we will get a last stand here from Max, but I arrive in the same place as you. 3-2 Topuria, no controversy on the decision. Your eyes will tell you that he was the better man. It won't be, hey, he just became the first man to knock out Holloway. Let's build a statue in the center of Madrid for him. But this will be a guy who's going to move up in the pound for pound and who's going to go on to some really big things. I mean, let's not forget, he spent this whole week kind of talking up that he wants Islam Makhachev and that he wants to become the first one to submit him, and throwing out there still that he wants to knock out Conor McGregor. So this is a guy that is really have the vision of how to lay out a memorable all-time great career. You got to win it in the cage for it to happen. But I look at the striking of both. I don't think this fight goes to the ground much. I think ultimately that combination of speed, accuracy, power, but that patience and poise of his mind, he's going to have too many weapons against Holloway in there. But I think the way he's going to be able to set up his shots, and really he's not going to make a lot of mistakes either. I think this will ultimately be he's going to get pushed. His stamina will get pushed. A lot of things will get pushed, but we're going to find out how great Topuria is. And I think he also does it in a 3-2 variety. Our third member of the show, Long Island Luke Nocita, is, I guess, somebody you can call a degenerate gambler. Luke, where are you leaning these days on this main event?
I hate to be the same as you guys, but I would definitely say my guess is Topuria by decision, probably 3-2, maybe 4-1. But to be different and to take good odds, let's go Max by decision, baby.
Oh, how dare you?
I don't think that's a bad bet. I mean, especially with it. What was Max plus what?
I'll tell you right now, Max is
195.
Oh, he's plus 205 on DraftKings right now.
Okay, just moved. It just moved then.
Okay, I mean, plus 205 for Max when I think he's fully in this fight is not a bad bet at all.
I want to say Ilia called the KO in round 1. That's plus 500. That's really not that great of odds.
Also, dude, who the fuck knocks out Max Holloway in a? I mean, listen, can you imagine if he knocks out Max Holloway in a round? I mean, that's hard to even process and like imagine what that would look like. I just don't buy that.
I also wanted to say, guys, I put a poll in the chat. Who does everyone have in the main event? We got 500 something votes. 59% are taking Max.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Wow. So the racist, misogynistic crowd fully behind Holloway here. It's great to see. Let's get to the co-main event before we run out of showtime, because this fight deserves just as much as a lovely close-up here. It is the middleweight division. Former champion Robert Whittaker reinvented once again with 2 consecutive victories there after that loss, which he claims the worst night of his career, and I think he's proved that. I'm sorry, one victory on the comeback there after the loss to the DDP before he won the championship. He came back against Ikram Aliskerov, reminded us who he is. At 33, Rob believes he's got one more run at the title. He could get there with a win in this one, but he's got to beat Khamzat Chimaev, still unbeaten, 30 years old. But we know about the ups and downs in recent years, from illnesses to layoffs to a lot of things going on in his career. But as we look at the odds right now, you've got Khamzat Chimaev as a minus 238 favorite on DraftKings, plus 195 for Robert Whittaker. Luke Thomas, I'm a little surprised that Whittaker's the underdog here, because the one thing I'll say about Khamzat, when he's on, he's on. It's not like we've seen him long stretches of him being off. He's just had such a weird run of late that the one thing I haven't seen him beat is a top-rated middleweight yet, to be honest, right? Ran through Mearshar early on, ran through Kevin Holland on about an hour's notice in a catchweight fight. But not only is he going into this division against one of the best right now, this is one of the best all time who's still a living legend and still believes he's going to break through, a guy who's only lost at this level at middleweight to Israel Adesanya, and the second one was debatable, and against the current champion in DDP. I'm not really a betting man, but before we even get into the breakdown, I'm like, plus money on Robert Whittaker against a guy who we still have questions about. This is going to be an interesting matchup on Saturday.
I mean, what are his 2 best wins, right? I mean, you could probably say Mearshard if you wanted to, or especially at 185, you could say that. But his 2 best wins are probably Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. Well, those guys are natural welterweights. I mean, well, Burns even more. I mean, fought at 155 for a time, but obviously is a natural welterweight. And again, that fight was at 170. But the point I'm trying to make is that's what's his resume at 185 that gives people so much confidence? That's a big factor for me. Also, man, he was the very, very, very last guy to weigh in. He did make it at 186, but it's. Did he look great to you? I mean, he didn't look terrible on the scales or anything. I don't mean he had a horrible cut, but the fact that this was a guy who made 170 at one point in his life, no problem, is now seemingly having a bit of a hard time, not even making 185, by the way, championship weight. He made 186 and was the last guy to do it.
Did you hear there's a conspiracy theory online from MMA Guru that the UFC was given an extra hour to him and Abus Magomedov to weigh in when originally it was supposed to be for 1 hour? I haven't done the research. I don't know if that's true. But
I think it'd be wise to wait for independent verification from a secondary or third source before accepting that. But either way, BC, did he look impressive on the scales? No. His whole energy this week has been somewhat, I don't know what the word would be, right?
Well, how about this word? Substitute teacher. Can we show that pick from the media day this week? A lot of people are changing their pick here. Mr. Nocita, if we can launch that. There we go. Yeah, I mean, sorry, Luke, Mrs. Johnson's has jury duty today, but
bro, you know who he looks like? You know how sometimes we'll be in Union or in Penn Station together, or Moynihan Station together, and we'll see those Amish people eating New York pizza and waiting for their train. That's what he looks like.
He does. He does. And you could also, Luke, show the face-off this week that we've seen, and we'll speak over it here. But I mean, you know, he's still Khamzat here, Luke. But is there something to the idea that everything he's been through is changing him now at age 30?
Well, he had a kid, and I think that changed him a little bit. And obviously, that illness, again, was it COVID, long COVID, something else, a combination of factors we don't know. I don't know, but I definitely think it has played a role in messing him up a little bit. I just don't know if we have the same kind of fiery, intense guy. And, you know, on some level, not being fiery and intense all the time is a good idea, because what does he do all the time? He comes a million, like the guy is shot out of a goddamn cannon. And that's fine when you're fighting the, you know, the Li Jinglings of the world, but that's not going to work in all likelihood anyway against Robert Whittaker. Here we go again. Like, who is more battle tested between these two? It's not even a contest. It's not even a fucking contest. Robert Whittaker is so vastly more prepared in terms of experience for this moment than Khamzat Chimaev. You barely even know what to say. I do think there are reasons to take Chimaev's, you mentioned he was a favorite in the odds, to take that seriously. And we can get to that. But I also believe, like, there are big I mean, even if he felt 100% and looked 100%, this is far and away tougher than anyone he's ever fought, than like half the guys on last minute notice or, you know, normal welterweights. This is a whole different ball game of opponent. And honestly, I think that the case for Robert Whittaker here is pretty decent.
It is. It is. We're going to get into that. But I like what you said, where it's a different opponent, a different level opponent. So we don't need to see the Ultimate Warrior version of Khamzat come running in and pounding his chest and saying, I want to kill everybody. And they did ask him that at the press conference. Like, why are you more, you know, laid back this time? I think some of it is the maturity. I also think some of it is what you mentioned with the fatherhood. Look, Chimaev sat down with ESPN's Brett Okamoto and shared part of his backstory that I don't remember him sharing before. And it does sort of change this conversation a bit. Let's listen.
You said that you were depressed a little bit?
You know, it's hard to move from one country to different country, move your stuff and change your bank account, a lot of different things, and still you have to train and change the team, coaches. And I had my family, move family to different country, and you still have to be in the gym twice a day, you know, so that was too much.
So after this fight, will you go back to Russia? Or like, what, have you kind of...
I'm going back to Sweden. My son has one surgery, has second one, but everything's good, thanks God. But so after that, my son will be healthy. So
how old is your son?
1.5.
You're only one?
Yeah, only one.
How's it been being the dad? Have you?
It's difficult, so it's fun.
What kind of surgery is he getting?
He has one kidney, some problem. I don't know what that calls in English, you know. So they say usually a lot of kids has it, you know. So thanks God, he's healthy, he's speaking, you know. So he's going, running, happy.
I don't know who was on the guitar.
May I?
But
so when we did our ultrasound, when Violetta was in utero, they told us she was going to have to that she was only going to have one kidney, and that the other one was all likelihood after she was born going to have to be removed. And we were like, well, is she going to be okay? And the doctor's like, yeah, you only need one kidney. We were like, seems a little nonchalant. In the end, her second kidney was fine and she didn't need it. But like, that's the most relatable thing. He's like, it's hard being a dad, and it's hard, like, worrying about, worrying about the health of your children. It's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I went through that when my kids were born, each having 6 surgeries in the first year and going down some crazy roads. So I certainly can sympathize with the new level of serious hecticness in Khamzat's life. You know, how that pertains to the actual fight is the big question we have to answer. But Luke, he's been through a lot, if we're being really honest. Those multiple bouts with COVID. He was saying this week in some interviews that when he retired on Twitter that time, he thought he had cancer. He was coughing up blood so often amid those COVID battles that he got misdiagnosed. So he literally thought like this was the end potentially. So he's been through a lot. There's still that unexplained weight miss against Nate Diaz to the level that he did and everything that happened there. I still think the whole relationship with your boy Ramzan is weird, and maybe there's a lot of extra pressure on him there. But either way, he's going in there against a former champion who's not just here to win. If you listen to him at Media Day this week, he's there to kill. Let's hear Bobby Nux get real.
I guess I'm not really focusing too much on him. I don't think about him too much. I get asked a lot of questions about Chimaev, this, Chimaev, that. I don't think about it. Like, you know, he's not on my mind very much. I am expecting him to come out hard and aggressive from the first second to the last, okay? And I have prepared accordingly for that. I've prepared for the hardest fight of my life to start extremely hard, like sprinting for the first 5 to 10 minutes, but also drag it out to 5 minutes. I'm ready to sprint for 25 minutes if so. And yeah, I come here for war.
You said that you reevaluated what drives you, and what drives you now, like today?
My family. You know, I'm going to use the word again, duty. And that's a strong word if you understand what it means. It's my duty to be there on Saturday night, to turn up and to fight Chimaev to the best of my ability for 25 minutes. I am not leaving this country without doing that, no matter what. This is my duty to my family, and I'm here to do that.
Damn. I hadn't heard
he
that.
looks like
I
he's
got
wired-
chills hearing that. Wow.
I'm telling you, I can be swayed by fancy packaging at times. That makes me want to put all my money on Whittaker. He's telling you that this is his championship on Saturday, that he knows he has to pass this test to get to where he wants to be. Luke, he's coming for all of it. So if Chimaev ain't the real Chimaev, this is going to be interesting. And maybe if it is the best of Chimaev, it still might be crazy interesting. I love this fight.
I think if we get the best of Chimaev, I think Whittaker's going to have some problems. But if there's anything lacking in him, he starts strong and fades, or whatever the situation could be, he's not focused or something. I think Whittaker's going to eat him up, dude. Whittaker is not the guy you can show up half-assed against. You just can't. Like, this guy is he is the consummate. Him and Max, right? Like, they've been champions. They know what it takes to get to the top. They know what it takes to win. They know what kind of focus you have to have. They know what preparation looks like, and they know what preparation looks like at the very, very highest level. There's no doubt about it. They don't have to figure it out. They don't have to, guess about what any of this is. They've actually done it before, and now they get to refine the process. And in cases of both Max and Robert Whittaker, this is only fine tuning for them. And so I think for that reason, like, to me, Ilia looks fully prepared. And so that's why I think there's some confidence in his ability to win. But with Khamzat, it's like, he's got the skills you definitely think to win, but does he have all of the other things he might need to get to that point? I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
All right, as we look at the middleweight rankings right now, Sean Strickland, the #1 contender, he's expected to get the next shot at DDP in a big rematch. Adesanya at 2, Robert Whittaker coming in at rank 3. You've got Imavov and Bolhalio after that. We have to go down to 13 to find Khamzat Chimaev. But Luke, we don't always follow the rankings on how we fill things out here. Do you think the winner of this fight does get the next shot after the DDP Sean rematch?
Assuming that the win is not some someone got kneed in the head, and they have to call it off like Sterling Jan won or something like that, and it's like a real win. I think that the winner here should get the title shot. I mean, again, Strickland does have a decent argument, a decent one, which is that, like, you can look at that fight and be like, did he win it? And again, upon rewatch, I thought he did against DDP. And so I feel like that's a decent argument. On the other hand, Whittaker's just been busy. He's been busy. And you go out there and you fight the guy that basically nobody wants to fight, and you beat him essentially on home soil. I mean, it's not, he's a relatively new resident there, but, sort of a predominantly Muslim country. Whittaker's not going to be the guy that the crowd is in all likelihood cheering for. And so, you go in there and you beat a guy like that after everything he's done. And let's posit a scenario. He puts it on Chimaev, like finishes him off. How do you not give Whittaker the title shot? Conversely, with all these questions surrounding Khamzat, and again, he doesn't have the body of work, but you go in there and you finish off a guy like Robert Whittaker, that's about as quality a win as you can possibly get. In that division. And it just doesn't come. The only way you can get a better version is if you fight for the actual title. And so I just feel like this win to me is just so much more of a signifier of real #1 contender status versus a guy who, yes, performed very well in all things being what they are against DDP the first time, but definitely didn't get his hand raised. I don't know. You can't cry if Sean Strickland gets the title shot. There's good reasons for him to get one. But personally speaking, I think a clear winner here would be the actual deserved guy.
I fully agree with you. Let's find out who wins now, Luke. A lot of people are saying, hey, if you rewatch the Duplessis fight, the ease at which he was able to take Robert Whittaker down and physically dominate him. Then you got the flip side of Whittaker saying, I can't explain it, but it was the worst night of my career. Everything went wrong. I just didn't feel it. He bounces back against Aleksandar in such a dramatic way that we know at this age, Robert Whittaker can still produce a championship level performance. But Chimaev's game, when he's in first gear and in control, is taking you down, exhausting you, and battering you. This is the central tension, Luke. When Chimaev tries to bring him to the ground, how will Rob perform in your eyes?
On the ground, I think Rob's going to have some problems. I think that Chimaev's takedowns are, again, assuming that he's okay, are just absurd. I think that his speed on his level change is like lightning, you know, and his ability to marry control positions, to break your base, to flatten you, to control you, whether he's crab riding or near side wrist control, cross wrist control, you know, I just, everything he can do is so fluid and strong. And to your point, like, again, I go back to it, the way in which he was able to pass DDP, Whittaker's guard, was this thing called the Tozy or the Sao Paulo pass, which is like, there's more than this, but there's basically two kinds of passing: mobile passing, like a Toriando pass, and then like, this grinding smash pass. And it was a smash pass, and it worked like well. Dude, like if that works for a guy like DDP, you would just imagine a guy like Khamzat could do that and then some. I think that he's going to give him real problems. But the thing is, like, Kamaru was able to hold on. Kamaru's got great wrestling. Kamaru really showed up for that fight, all things being what they were. So I don't know. I'm of two minds, man. I mean, I really, like you talked about the storm with Ilia. I just don't believe, like the early one, I don't really buy that as a frame, but I do buy it with Khamzat. I do buy that if you can outlast him. Like if this fight, let me ask you, BC, if this fight goes to the fourth round, even if Rob has lost the first three, would you not really feel like, okay, Rob's got a real opportunity here?
100%.
Does he not?
He does. But if you think I can keep talking after you said the term smash pass and not bring up O'Malley's marital situation and the fact that Hawk Tua girl says that he won't stop calling her, DMing her, you're crazy. But yes, Luke, the later this 5-round non-title co-main event bout goes, considering the great questions we have about Chimaev, especially if Chimaev gets early wrestling success, but is not able to turn that into heavy ground and pound, he could end up gassing himself out in that process. So, Luke, I'm going to go right to the pick here and tell you this. I got Robert Whittaker coming back, getting back into the title slot, maybe in a rematch with DDP, but we'll see what happens in that Strickland fight. But I think he stops Chimaev in those championship rounds. I'm all in here on Whittaker. You do know he's one of my favorite fighters ever, but I really believe he's got enough juice left to make another run.
You know what? You might have just convinced me. This one's harder for me. This one's tough because Whittaker is better overall in so many ways, but Khamzat is such a ball of fire early. Fuck it. Give me Whittaker. Give me Whittaker. I'll take Whittaker. You know what? I do want to hear what Long Island Luke has to say. Where are you on this one? Now, granted, Long Island Luke, I mean, he'll just blow any Aussie that exists. So wow. I don't know if that's in play here. Where are you on this one?
No, Whittaker is my favorite fighter. I will preempt with that. But I did say earlier in the week, I think Khamzat in rounds 1 and 2. As the week has gone on, I think you guys have swayed me as well. I'm going Bobby Knuckles.
Wow, Bobby Knuckles all the way around. We're all about to take a fucking bath on that one probably. But you know what? This is what I love about these fights, dude. Like the best fights in MMA, they are hard to call. They're not easy at all to predict. There's so many things that could make it go one way or the other. It's really what I love about them.
Dude, I'm more fired up than I was when Shab was like, turn the fuck up. Dude, that guy went ham. That guy went ham in the paint on the 209.
He left me a voicemail. I have to hear it. I don't know what he's saying.
Oh, you should play it on the air. We would break
I'm definitely not doing that. I'm definitely not doing that.
I'm telling you, I'm coming around with the most Shab respect I've had in a long time, Luke. He's making moves, all right?
Hey, listen, man, you push a guy long enough and he pushes back.
You jerk a guy off long enough, Luke, you're gonna have to clean up the mess. All right. We all learned that in our frats in first night in jail.
Did we?
All right. Yeah. Topic number 3. Let's keep it going. Hey, you got to know about what's going to happen here for the future of the light heavyweight division. Magomed Ankalaev is the #1 contender. He was the #2 contender And he got booked into this fight against Aleksandar Rakić, who was great, but coming off of 2 stoppage defeats. Not only did he miss out on the title shot against Alex Pereira, who took on Khalil Roundtree, ranked number 8. It is said this week that the UFC told Ankalaev, who seemed to confirm this in the media stops he did, that the UFC said, you're not only going to have to win against Rakic, it's going to have to be an exciting performance for you to get the nod. So that's the setup for what's at stake here as the big favorite, Ankalaev, minus 380 against a very qualified Rakic plus 300. Luke Thomas, a lot going on in this fight. But let me ask you that important question first. Will this be an exciting one that gives Ankalaev, if he wins, the opportunity to make the leap? Or are these two in some weird way going to cancel each other out because Ankalaev somehow seems to not be able to get out of his own way?
I think this one's going to be a little bit more nip and tuck. Remember, you go back to 300, Rakic in that first round tuned Yuri up. I mean, Yuri got a couple of good shots in, but in general, in that first round, Rakic won. Now, after that, it kind of went downhill, even though, Yuri just doesn't basically have defense. So, obviously and you mentioned the Blachowicz fight, although obviously it's a little bit different, but he obviously has vulnerabilities. But it's not like Ankalaev has ever shown like really great, sustained, smart offensive pressure. Now, against guys who are, Donkerson and Rick Rickerson, like a Johnny Walker, yes, he can do that. But Rakic is not quite that guy. I think he's a little bit more put together. He's definitely very athletic and strong as well. He can mix it up. He can wrestle. And so I think this one's going to be a little bit more true mixing of the martial arts. I think there's going to be some exchanging on the feet, but I actually think it's going to be all the phases. There's going to have to be a real gut check moment through various positions, rounds for the winner here to emerge. What are the odds? You may have mentioned them. I may have missed it.
Yeah, they're minus 380 is Ankalaev, plus 300 Rakic.
That seems insane to me. That seems insane. I recognize that Ankalaev is probably better and has more reliable methods to win. I don't think that's unfair, and I would pick him straight up. However, Jesus Christ, like the confidence in Ankalaev to like effectively close the show, I think is misplaced here a little bit.
All right, let's look at the stare down between the two of them this week. And Rakic, despite coming off of the 2 TKO losses, the second one due to injury, certainly one of the better fighters in this division. You see that intensity.
He's a big dude for 205 too, man.
He is. Long Island, look, can we jump from here to the Jurassic back that Rakic was showing on social media?
Dude,
good Lord.
Fuck. I mean, yo, that is. Dude, you know who used to have a back like that in his prime? I'm not kidding. Tell me if I'm wrong. Evander Holyfield.
Oh, good God, yeah.
Evander Holyfield had a back like that. Like that is. People are like, what about USADA? Yeah, what about him? Or
yeah, what about he is war ready. He's gonna come for the fight and your girl with that type of back. Let's hear from Ankalaev this week, who is not afraid to stir the pot and feeling like a lot of us do that. Yeah, maybe at times he's boring, but what about meritocracy? This guy deserves to be back in the title spot.
Чтобы защитить чемпиона, я думаю, мы пройдем его и все.
We know that Rakic is a great fighter. I think the only reason that the UFC put him in front of me is to defend their champion. So we're going to go across from him. We're going to roll him over, and then we're going to move on to the champ.
Now, Luke, there's a theory from my colleague Brent Brookhouse of CBS Sports, who you know well, where he gets very angry when people like me say, well, look, Ankalaev, the toughest style matchup available to the champion Poatan. What he does is show me the stats of how little Ankalaev actually attempts takedowns in his last 5 or 6 fights, and really tries to push back on the idea that this guy's boring because he tends to let his hands go more than ever now. Where are you on that idea that should he survive and advance here, that he's the toughest out available for Poatan at 205?
I mean, he might be, but I don't know how tough that is. I mean, you're looking at the stats. He averages per 15 minutes, talking about Ankalaev, basically 1 takedown per 15 minutes. That good enough to beat Poatan? 1 takedown per 15 minutes? Probably not. That's not even 2 for 25. You know what I mean? Like, this idea that he's a takedown. I mean, dude, the whole Blachowicz fight, and the reason why it was a goddamn draw was because he just sat there getting leg kicked for much longer than he ever needed to. Then when he finally went to the wrestling, he was able to have some success with it, but then didn't do a lot with it when he had it, it's like, this is the guy that everyone's supposed to be afraid of. And I've said this before, BC. Tell me if you disagree. I know there's a lot of folks who are new to MMA who just can't even fathom that. 205 used to have a shit ton of good wrestlers. Rampage was very good defensively wrestling, less so offensively, but very good. Rashad, Tito Ortiz, by the way, had obviously very good wrestling. Dude, how about Phil Davis? Phil Davis would be, I mean, he's a little bit gun shy in terms of being hit, so he's not like some overwhelming offensive threat in that way. But like if he was able to get his hands around Poatan, it's just a different ball game. And then you forget DC, forget John Jones, a whole different ball game there.
How about Bader, Glover, Shogun? I mean, these guys have grappling.
Shogun,
games.
not a great takedown guy, but not at all. But I know what you're trying to say. Like the current state of light heavyweight, people get mad at me when I say the sport was, or that division anyway, was better 10 years ago. It was vastly more difficult to succeed there 10 years ago. So Ankalaev is nothing to be dismissed. But I'm with Brent on this one. This idea that he's like some takedown powerhouse. He has some of those abilities, but putting it together in a coherent game plan that's consistently applied has not been a strong suit of his.
Yeah, indeed. Look, you've played up the donkness in Ankalaev, and there is a string here of bad luck / like you said, not the best performance against Blachowicz with the vacant title on the line. Do you know what the ultimate donk situation here would be for him if he takes too much to heart the UFC's insistence that this fight be exciting and he unnecessarily gets into a war and gets stopped? Would that be on brand for him if that's where we end up?
His UFC debut, he was beating the shit out of Paul Craig and then got subbed at the last second in the third round by staying in Paul Craig's guard. That's well within the possibility. And again, that was before people really knew that Paul Craig's guard was a big problem. Okay, fair enough. But nevertheless, it's like, I mean, Ankalaev has a lot of ability. Like, so we're talking like he doesn't have ability. He's got ability. Like, how good is his jab when it's on? It's great. How good is his defensive wrestling when it's on? It's very, very good. His defensive wrestling overall, BC, 86%. That's pretty fucking good. You know what I mean? Like, no one really puts it on him in that way. But again, I go back to it. It's not just do you have these individual skills. It's the blending of them and then the application of them in a consistent, rational, aggressive manner. That has been something that has been a real problem for him, with the exception of like, Johnny Walker, who's just, the king of the donks, Johnny Walker. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. This is a donk division. Like, I have no disrespect for Dominic Reyes, but he was supposed to be the next takeover of the division, and he just donked out, right? Maheda almost wins the title from Jones, and his knees donk out, and he's done. Like, it's weird.
I'll be honest, though. I did think that Reyes beat Jones. That's the only fight I've ever seen of John where I'm like, he lost this one. That's the only one. But you're right, he couldn't sustain it.
Where they asked Dana to make the perfect fighter, and they asked him every category.
I did see that.
He said John Jones for every category but one. He gave Conor McGregor the other one.
How does he give him like striking? How does he pick Jones over like Poatan? I don't even understand.
Like, he's undefeated. Look, Jones is a great striker, but yes, there's been
Jones is a good MMA striker. That is true, but like that's the best MMA striker you can think of. I don't think that's true.
For all we're saying here, if it's an Ankalaev fight, we're going to get somewhere in the middle of our expectations. So I'm going to give a win here, Luke. I think he wins this fight. The problem for him is I don't think it's going to be insanely overexciting. I think it's going to be one of those wins where there's a little bit of survival involved. He edges out Rakic, who's plenty motivated here to get back into this title mix. Give me Ankalaev by somewhat close decision, which will fuel those arguments of, now does he get it? There might be an opening there for someone else to steal it with a big win.
I agree. I basically think that Rakic has some physical tools where if Ankalaev is not applying, I want to be clear. I think Ankalaev has room for error here. So it's not like any error is super costly. Whereas like, in the main event, any error is very costly in either direction. But I think he's got a little room to play with here. But I think that Rakic is a bit of a live dog. I'm going to go with Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev gets it done, but I'm a little bit hard pressed to be like, oh, he's going to look super impressive. If the guy at all standing next to him or in front of him is, defensively responsible or, by the way, this is something we haven't even talked about. Rakic has pretty good takedowns. His overall success rate is just 25%. Like that's pretty low, but he'll go for them over and over and over again until he can get it. At a bare minimum, he can stall out a fight or slow down momentum or, you know, whatever he needs to, assuming he's not getting bombed on. Like Yuri's a bad matchup for him because Yuri took a lot of punishment, but for now still has durability. And then that left Rakic available and open. But Ankalaev doesn't strike that way, right? So I think it'll be a little bit nip and tuck. Give me 29-28 Ankalaev.
The rankings, by the way. So Ankalaev moved from number 2 to number 1, where they have him tied with Blachowicz, which I don't understand. Look, I don't even understand Rakic at 5 coming off of 2 TKO defeats. Is there just no one else? So he's got to be at 5. I don't understand how he can still be ranked that high in that scenario. And by the way, the rankings, the latest update moved Max Holloway up 4 places at lightweight, despite not having a fight in between. I don't understand this at all.
Yeah, I mean, there are criticisms to make of the rankings, like Dana being like, I don't like the rankings. Okay, fair enough. But then when you hear what he doesn't like about him, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're just looking at the division, Ankalaev sitting at 1 for 205. Okay. Prochazka sitting at also at 1. I don't agree with that, but okay. 3 is Jamal Hill, former champ who lost to the number 1 guy. They bumped him down. That's not the end of the world. Blachowicz at 4. I don't quite get that one either. And then Rakic sitting at 5. I think it's a little high, especially because Krylov has been inactive. And then you got Roundtree sitting at 7, which I actually kind of understand. So, I mean, there's just nobody making big waves. That's the problem with 205. Sure. Like at 185, there's people like Anthony Hernandez clawing his way up. You know, obviously at 170, look at Shavkat just burning through the division. 205 doesn't really have that. And so as a consequence, you're just like, well, do these rankings make sense? No, but the division itself is weird. I'll say this, in defense of the rankings committee, it's actually a little hard to rank 205 right now.
And I said it was Jan tied for first. I meant Yuri in that case, but we'll see where we go. Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying right there. But look, before we continue on with this show, I got to bring up something. You kind of look really fit in that t-shirt there.
You know what? It's a great t-shirt brand. Why don't you tell them about it?
So we have partnered with True Classic, which makes just the kind of clothes I'm looking for. The kind that are lightweight, but of high quality, very comfortable. And Luke, I mean, you're looking like you're about to go in the gun show there. You know what I'm telling you so far? When I put on the t-shirt, when I put on the sweatpants, which I'm wearing right now, and I wear everything from exercise to sleep to grocery shopping, very performance ready. I will say the fit just feels good. It makes me feel fit because it's highlighting everything I want to be highlighted, and in some ways putting the rest to the side. You know what I mean?
Here's the reality. Whenever I wear True Classic, and this is the only compliment that matters in my life, but it's like, I mean, it's either you win this one or you don't. It's the championship. My wife loves it when I wear True Classic. She's like, yes, you know, do I have a lot of patterns? No, it's a plain look, but my wife loves that. Again, it fits great. I feel great. I look great in it. And if I can get my wife's seal of approval, buddy, you're cooking with freaking gas at that point. What more do you need? If it's man approved and woman approved, you're covering all your bases there, BC.
I got to say it's woman approved in my house because, you know, Luke, I can get a little bit exotic with my color pattern tastes. What you get from True Classic, though, is just that, the True Classic look, the dark navy blue, the gray, the black, like you're saying, premium products at a very affordable price. And for me, Luke, I can feel the fabric. I know if it's quality, if it's going to be, you know, worn out in 3 washes or not. Not with True Classic. You get what the name tells you. So with fall here right now, it's time for our Morning Kombat viewers and listeners to step up their game. Right now, you can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/combat in order to save. That's obviously combat with a K. That's trueclassic.com/combat. Shop now. Elevate your wardrobe today. Luke, we want to be seeing all these MK Donks as fit and cool and chill in their wash dad age as possible.
Yeah, True Classics got you covered. By the way, 100% perfect fit guarantee and easy returns. Shows up in your mail. All looks good. All packaged together. All looks nice. There's 4 million online customer reviews. 4 million customers, and I should say 200,000 online customer reviews. Here's my challenge to the viewers. Don't take our word for it. Of course, you can buy at trueclassic.com/combat. Go see what the reviews are. Take a look at them. Easy to mix and match different things because of the solid tones and the great fit. It's very hard. You got to try to go wrong with this kind of a fit. trueclassic.com/combat.
There it is right there. You too can look like Luke Thomas, a true classic. I wouldn't say American classic, but also a true Indian classic, Luke, just to be fair to your background and your heritage.
Where were you born?
Waterbury, Connecticut. War-torn water, the dirty water, as they call it, Luke.
Hey,
Indeed.
which is poorer, where I was born or where you were born? I don't know the answer to that.
It's a comparable scenario. Let's go to topic number 4, which is the rest of UFC 308, the pay-per-view card. Remember that 2 p.m. Eastern start time for the main card, 10 a.m. Eastern. So we get breakfast with Wimbledon here with UFC. I like that. Luke, up and down this card, there are some interesting stories, but the man kicking off the pay-per-view is getting a lot of attention with his cinnamon hair and desert pirate look. I'm talking about Shara Bullet Magomedov, who will be taking on Armen Petrosyan there to kick off that pay-per-view. And the odds at the moment, minus 175 for Shara Bullet, plus 145 for Armen Petrosyan. Luke, is this the fight where Shara Bullet kicks the door down and adds to his game and shows us that he really is, worthy of the spotlight? Or do you see a potential trap against the veteran Petrosyan?
You know what, dude? I'm not a super big believer in Shara Bullet. Now, let me clarify what that means. This is not me declaring he's some fraud. I don't think that. He's obviously good, right? There's no question he's got some ability, and some of the reason why he's got the hype is entirely justified. He has an exciting style. He's got a wide array of different strikes from which to choose from. He's got a dynamic kicking game. Shara Bullet is a good fighter worth taking seriously. I want to make sure everyone understands what I am saying and what I am not saying. However, BC, I do not understand the hype. That's the part, or at least at a bare minimum, I think there's a gap between what he's shown and what the hype is around him. I don't quite get that. I think that his takedown defense is poor. His grappling is not great at all. And the guys he's gone up against are a lot of fighters who have some ability, but tend to be very error prone. And even then, he's kind of struggled with him. Now, Armen Petrosyan is not really a guy I think you have to have a significant takedown concerns against. So, there is that. But this idea that he's ready to go through the division and march through and get a title shot, I can't in any way preclude that. But I don't know what folks are looking at that gives them such great confidence that is inevitable. I think that's the part where there's a bit of a disconnect for me. Now, Petrosyan's a guy, BC, who will probably strike at a similar range, who doesn't mind taking damage to give damage, and I think is probably a little less sharp than Shara Bullet. So this is definitely a fight that Shara Bullet should win. This is a bit more of a favorable matchup in that regard. But I just want to caution folks, again, I'll say it again. Topuria didn't enter the UFC with this kind of hype, and look at him now. Dude, Volkanovski, after Volkanovski beat Chad Mendes, did anyone be like, that guy's going to be number one pound for pound in the sport? Nope. He didn't come in here with a lot of hype. So there's a lot of times, and by the way, it works the other way too. Conor McGregor came in here as a two-weight world champion from Cage Warriors, had a ton of hype, and then delivered on it. So it can go the other way. My only point is, a lot of times I'll see fighters have hype the instant they get to the UFC, and very rarely to me does the hype match what the tape shows. So Bullet is good. He probably should win this one. I just need to see a little bit more from him before I'm ready to declare him the future of this division.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But Shara Bullet, already 30 years old, of course, out of Dagestan, maybe the only fighter from there who doesn't wrestle as sort of the base.
Has Usman Nurmagomedov.
There you go. Fair point there. But he can handle himself there, Luke.
That's true.
Bruno Silva, Antonio Tricoli, and Michal Olashechuk were the 3 victories he won since making his debut in October. So I don't think this is necessarily a step up from that level, but I think it will be a fight that furthers the conversation at least, because look, he does look the part of this badass, but he almost looks too commercially created. He looks like a movie villain. He doesn't look like an actual dude. Does that make sense?
Who?
Shara Bullet. So he almost looks like he looks the part too well of this absolute weird looking badass guy.
Can I be honest? I've never, and so for example, this year, or maybe it was last year, I can't remember, but Tukey was like, I want to go as a pirate for Halloween. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. Pirates are fucking lame.
Pirates are cool. Don't bang on pirates. Pirates are cool as shit. All right.
Are they? I don't feel like they're Long Island Luke. Are pirates cool?
No comment on that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it's a whack fucking bit. Like, I don't.
Look, you ain't cool unless Nina Drama is interviewing you, and Shara Bullet reached that level this week. Let's watch the hijinks.
All right. Wait, no, Shara, wait, slow down. So, Shara, please. It's very terrifying. Wait, translator. Okay. No, okay. All right. Wait, come on, Shara, I have. Okay. All right. So what do you call this? Is this just attack? Oh, please. Shara, Jesus Christ. Okay, so dad.
Oh, Luke, that was assault, brother, for a while there. What was going on there?
I mean, there was very big, I've got a crush on the girl energy going through that room right there. But the whole point is like, dude, like what value does Nina Drama serve? She kind of humanizes these guys, right?
To a degree, yeah.
Because we're all here being like, hey, this guy took money from Kadyrov and this guy thinks Hitler was cool. And you're like, send them to Nina Drama, and then they become a little bit more human, a little bit more relatable, a little bit more fun-loving. And then Shara goes in there and like doesn't understand the assignment at all and kind of fucks it up a little bit. But what are you gonna do?
He was there to crush, no question, Luke. But when you made that Hitler reference, you're talking about Gordon Ryan, Luke. What the hell's going on in combat sports, right?
I just don't understand what people are doing these days. Have we reached the point where it's like, guys, Hitler was bad, right? Like all bad,
Well, maybe those millennials, Luke, they're not up on their history. What else do you want to look at here? I'm fired up that Chris Barnett is finally back after 2 years when he moves up again, or when he fights Kennedy and Zekru, who is moving up from light heavyweight. I don't know if that moves you, Luke, but that guy is awesome TV. What are you focused on the rest of this card?
Man, there's a lot of good fights on this card. Obviously, I think going under the radar, 2 fights in a massive way are going under the radar. Dude, Lerone Murphy, Dan Ige. Lerone Murphy, remember, had that very quiet but very dominant win over Edson Barboza and looked very, very good doing it. Here we have a situation where he's going to be against a very tried and true fighter. Dan Ige finally, by the way, getting a full camp, obviously filling in on 76 seconds notice to take on Diego Lopez a couple of UFCs ago. But this is a very tough fight for both guys. This is a huge opportunity for Lerone Murphy. I love this contest. And then lastly, BC, I'm going to mispronounce both their names. Mateusz Rebecki. I'm sure I know he's Polish. I'm saying the name super wrong. And then
probably Rebecki.
I'm sure that's a better way to put it. And then Mike Tebek Oralbai.
Yeah.
That's a sick fight between two guys who have pretty different skill sets, but a lot of ability, a lot of questions about both of them, especially after Rebecki's last fight where he kind of got overwhelmed and both his eyes swelled up real bad. But this is a fun one to pay attention to. Great fight all the way up and down.
And also, we're going to get a lot of action probably in that Jeff Neal RDA matchup. I just hope RDA, who's lost 3 of 4, is not going to get set to the woodshed here, Luke, because I love that man.
RDA's got a lot of ways to win this one. Big questions for Jeff Neal at the stage of his career as well. Tough
He's
fight.
lost 2 in a row. He's on a 2-fight skid. So there we go with that for UFC 308 this Saturday. Should be a fun ride. Our final topic of the day, our boy PFL Donn Davis. He can't stop saying stuff, Luke, and it has triggered a Dana White response after Power Slap yesterday. That was hilarious. But let's set the context. We're less than a week removed from, of course, the biggest pay-per-view in PFL history, their super fight Battle of the Giants card, which turned out to be a success in a lot of ways. Francis Ngannou gets the knockout. Chris Cyborg takes out Pacheco. We had a lot of positives coming out of there. So what did our boy Mike Heck over at MMA Fighting, great website, what did he do? Set up a town hall with old Donn Davis to get a reaction. And Luke, he's responded with a couple things that deserve our reaction. Let's set the stage for the first one. This is Mike Heck asking Donn Davis, what's your favorite MMA fight of all time?
Favorite all-time MMA fight. So Donn, you have a night out, you go home and you're just like, man, I want to watch a fight. What's the first fight you're going to find?
So people who are doctors don't watch medical shows. People who are lawyers don't watch legal shows on TV. I'm aware of everything that's going on because it's important for business. But I don't want to watch other people's MMA shows for enjoyment. You know what I'm saying? I get a lot of MMA, right? So I don't sit there and say, let's kick up and watch me a good KSW. It's just not, it would never cross my head, right? So to me, I'm aware of everything that's going on from a business standpoint, but I would never sit there and say, that's my relaxation away from work. This would be, I'm working, I'm taking in what's working for them, I'm understanding what's going on. But if I'm away from work, I'm away from work. P.S.
Favorite.
Good Lord, Don. I mean, hey, Don, just say Griffin Bonner won. Say Fedor and Pride. Say anything. Say anything.
Say Ngannou versus Fajeda. You know what I mean? Like,
say anything other than what was the Vince McMahon problem creatively at WWE before he shat in everyone's hair, Luke, which was he didn't watch the competitors. He was just in his own bubble. That's exactly what the hell is wrong with PFL right now.
dude, here's the thing. Most people in my orbit and in my life, like my friends, don't watch MMA, and I actually kind of prefer it because it does give me a sense of like being able to like break away and engage with a different part of my life. And listen, sometimes on vacation, I'll definitely go a week, not watching fights, sometimes even 2, but that's usually pushing it. But, we all want to break from our traditional routines. But if you're a fight junkie, you just watch fights. Like, it's just what you do. You can't even think about anything else a big portion of the time. Like, your life is kind of centered around that. And you can say whatever you want about Dana White, and maybe in his current iteration, this is less true. But for the vast majority of his life, he's been a fight junkie. Look at Bob Arum. This fucking guy is in his 80s. He's a fight junkie.
Dude, he's 92 and he flies all over the globe
to watch fights. Eddie Hearn, fight junkie. I can go on down the list. They're all fight junkies, and they watch fights from other organizations. So I don't have any judgment about the idea that at times you want to get away, or that, in general, I don't judge anybody who doesn't like combat sports. It's not for everybody. Fine. But if you're a promoter of combat sports, if this is what you do for a living and you don't watch UFC or any other promotion for that matter, like, this is how you arrive at a position where you can say with a straight face, hey, we've got as many ranked fighters as UFC, because you don't have a fucking clue what you're looking at. It's not, you are missing key portions of information. And more to the point, BC, we talked about it last week, how they don't have, it's a PFL is not really a fight promotion. It's a content play / financial asset. And this is why we also said this last week. They don't have a soul or an identity. This is a mechanical job to this guy, which, again, that's not the end of the world. But how can you possibly hope to ever actually compete or build a fan base, or even more so, a product with any kind of identity, if you only ever watch what your organization does, which, by the way, is, I'm sorry to say, largely irrelevant MMA. It's like, I don't even know how to describe that. People have told me in the past, like, the guys who run that, they're smart, but they're not fight guys. Yeah, they're not fight guys.
Exactly. Hey, Don, put the fight guys in charge. Let's go. There are people under that banner that do know what they're doing in the fight game. They did acquire
Mike Hogan is a fight guy for sure,
without question. The Bellator matchmaker. I hope I want to say I hope he's matchmaking for PFL proper, but they don't really have matchmaking. They have tournaments in the way it's set up, and there's a lot we could get into on how they could fix it. But like, Don, if you're going to go on the microphone and do these type of moments aimed at building PR and positivity for PFL, you got to stop with this us versus UFC, because you're not on the same level. You're not producing the same level of things. And he would go on in this soundbite to tell Mike Heck, like, look, I'm a 62-year-old entrepreneur. I haven't taken a day off in 7 years. I work around the clock. I love it. Well, then you should be watching what's going on in MMA around the world regularly to see how you can enhance your product, and really to see the areas they tried so hard to be different that in some ways they're too different, right? If we didn't say, hey, I think PFL can compete with UFC, Don said that. So Don, if you're going to do that, dude, you got to be more into it. Okay. The finances are great, but like, they've created a TV show here. Look, they don't have a live event, and they don't have something that's different enough that it's causing a wedge in the market. They may have moments like this Francis win where they pop up high into the news stack, and that's when they got to double and triple down and say, hey, if you like that one, in my opinion, we got another pay-per-view coming around in a month and a half, and it's going to be even better. And that guy you liked on it, we're going to try to get him back for it. I think that's how they're going to build momentum and conversation, not look at our unique tournament filled with washed names you never met before. And oh yeah, we got those really critically acclaimed Bellator guys, but they're going to fight out there where no one can watch them on the Max app in Ireland. Like, there's a lot of issues, and that answer really, I think it spells out a lot. Let's now hear Mike Heck talking to him, Don Davis, about what areas did the PFL pay-per-view last week excel, where Don is really starting to feel like it beat every single UFC pay-per-view and every metric this calendar year.
This event, by our research, beat every viewership number of every UFC event this year and was very, very close to Ring of Fire, which, it's Ring of Fire. I mean, it's the biggest boxing event in 5 years. So which was really our benchmark, right? Because Ring of Fire is a Saudi event. Ring of Fire is our same time. And Ring of Fire was the biggest combat sport event, call it this year. And we were we were 40% bigger than some, 20% smaller than some, but overall the same global viewership metrics of Ring of Fire. So that was really something that was our stretch goal, and that's what we achieved. And we put out those metrics about an hour ago for everybody who's interested in the weeds of all the details. Because as you know right now, economics flow a very different way. In the sports world, it used to just be PPV buys, but now money is made many different ways. Sponsorship, social media, host fees. There's an economic bundle that's very, very different now. And so there's many metrics that matter. But most of all for us, to kind of answer this, to kind of where we started, when you said, what's the most important thing? Most important thing is people are aware of PFL. And you will see in those metrics that we put out that we accomplished that goal. Because that global viewership number, the global reach number, the global engagement number, the global post number, the global media number, everything we put out, accomplished that goal of awareness, discussion, and favorability. And that was everything here.
Look, it beat every UFC pay-per-view this year, except in the most valuable metrics that matter, like ticket sales and pay-per-view buys. So, it's like he's living on Saudi money right now, but he's acting like he created that, right?
I don't know what that was. I do understand the notion that there are a few different metrics beyond the big ones that also count. And I will say, for any PFL show I've ever tried to watch or invest in, just in terms of whatever metrics I got watching it live in the audience that watched my stuff, it was on par with what I would call a smaller UFC pay-per-view. But that's still pretty good. I mean, that's not nothing. So that's the weird part to me. It's they say this outrageous shit like, hey, we've got as many ranked guys as the UFC. Yeah, but yours are all 30-20. Theirs are all 10-1. It's not, they're all ranked guys, but it's not the same thing. And so here again, it's we beat all, UFC events this year on these kind of metrics. And dude, that's not nothing, the ones he's describing. And there probably is some evidence that it was watched fairly well, but you can't count pay-per-views and ticket sales, in part because, dude, no one was at that fight. I mean, the stands were empty. And that's partly, a Saudi Arabia thing, but they weren't that empty for Better Beef Bivol. You know what I mean? It was much more widely attended for that one. So you can do better there. And this is my point. They keep emphasizing things that are relevant and saying that's as good. No, it's relevant and valuable, but it's not as good. It's not as big. It's not as decorated. It's not as important. It's a different thing that you're still trying to build up to. So just celebrate that. But they can't. They have to kind of go out and be like, well, this is even better than UFC. It's dude, nobody believes you. Nobody believes you. Absolutely not a soul believes you.
When you make those type of boasts to MMA fans, right? This isn't him on, like we said last week, a financial show or a media, this is on MMA media show, on MMA Fighting with Mike Heck. So you're speaking to hardcore MMA fans, and you're not going to win over their trust, love, or belief. Where like Luke, a lot of people have made comparisons to what PFL isn't by bringing up the last true competitor, and that was Strikeforce, and they're all dead on. But a lot of us, I wanted Strikeforce to succeed, just like I wanted WCW to succeed against WWF at the time because I wanted competition and I really liked the Strikeforce product, the look, the roster, the way they match made, everything. It was what we were looking for. I think the fans want to get behind PFL, but PFL doesn't know how to put themselves in a position to truly embrace that hardcore fan, right? Like by making these type of boasts, it's like, come on, like know your audience. You know what I'm saying?
They don't have an audience.
Well, know the MMA audience, know the hardcores that I think if you change some things, like, look, I wish they promoted in almost a pro wrestling style, kind of like Pride was in Japan. Ditch the tournament, get us on cliffhangers, build toward things, like get us invested in the journey, not the one big fight night. They got some work.
But you have to be, dude, like the guys who built Pride were, I mean, they were pro wrestling guys to an extent, but they were fight fans too. And they were, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously in Japan, those two worlds, for folks who may not realize, they're a little bit more interconnected there than they are here, but they're still pretty connected here too. But they're especially connected over there. You have people who know how to do that here. These guys are Excel spreadsheet guys. They're not narrative builders. And, here we are.
Look, loosely related to this was Dana White's reaction. We don't have the video to throw to, but from the Power Slap press conference yesterday. And the big takeaway out of there was when he was asked by the media, his thoughts on Francis's performance and everything related to that. And it seemed like Dana just went back into doubling and tripling down on, like, I set the rules, I rewrite history mode. In one breath saying that, the fans, when he was asked if the fans really want Ngannou Jones, is there any chance it can happen? And he was like, no, the fans don't want that. They want Ngannou, or they want Jones Aspinall. But the real stickler with the people watching was when he's trying to say that Francis is all about the money, and then at the same time making the argument that he could have made more money by staying with UFC, which I don't think anyone really believes. And Francis has threatened to actually show the receipts of late. Luke, what do you make of that, where Dana White just comes out and just shits on parts of the truth and pulls a Dana, to be fair?
Yeah, I don't understand. How can you make the argument that he could have made more at UFC, but he left because he wanted to make more money?
So what he says there is he's back to Ngannou is afraid of Jones, and that's why it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, Dana says things. I mean, you have to live in a world where we understand the gig. Promoters have to just kind of say stuff, but you're not under any obligation to just accept it. And nor should you. This is silly. It's silly. It's not, it barely even deserves comment. They want to keep control of everyone. Francis didn't want any bigger control about him. He had an opportunity to go to a lesser MMA organization, but potentially make more money with an open contract to go into boxing. And that's what he did. And Dana is salty about that because in the end, even though Francis was viciously KO'd by Anthony Joshua, in general, this was a very, very good move for him. And it showed that, again, Francis is a special case, but that they're in special cases, guys can live outside of the UFC and do even better. Dana wants the world to be like, this is where only the best fight the best. Yes. But also like, this is where the best outcomes are. You want to make the most money, you got to stay here. But we know that's not even true. It's not even true for Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, obviously. Right. So like, we already know it's not true, but they want you to believe that. And so he just says crazy shit and then expects you to accept it. You don't have to accept it.
Ngannou's the only one that has given him an L, that has sort of played the game against him, had to go to extraordinary lengths to win that fight against Gane, fight out his deal. But Dana can't ever do what we desperately seem to want him to do, which is just say, hey, good for Francis. Well, I saw the fight. Well done. Good job. Because he can't, no one else can win like that again. And it will be hard for anybody to win like that again because the changes to the contracts. But like Dana must make sure that the narrative stays the way it is so no fighter can realize that is possible. You got to be special and under the right circumstances. But credit to Francis. I mean, look, if he's going to go in the boxing ring with no experience against Fury and Joshua, he's not afraid of John Jones.
No, it's the dumbest fucking argument of all time. It's just.
But Dana did add on and say, I wanted to cut Francis after he lost 2 in a row, meaning that weird Derek Lewis fight after getting beaten by Stipe for the title. And that just makes him look even more chaotic because he would have missed out on that incredible run that followed it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of understand that in one sense, which is that, like, dude, you go back and you watch that fight. It wasn't just a bad fight. It was lifeless to the point of incomprehensibility.
Yes.
And so it was so bad. I understand why he would be particularly enraged, but, you know, he eventually was talked out of it by one of his lieutenants. I don't know who that was. Whoever that was did him a favor because obviously he went on to do pretty incredible things thereafter. It's like, dude, you're going to leave Sam Alvey on like a historic losing streak and then cut Francis after an admittedly very bad performance, but really just one bad performance. I mean, I know he lost the Stipe fight, but he was just overwhelmed. It was a better guy. You're going to cut him after one bad performance. That doesn't show sound judgment. Like, why is that a flex? I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why you would even say something like that.
Sam Alvey thinks the UFC fighters in the antitrust lawsuit were overpaid originally, Luke. So, you know,
yeah, right.
There you go with that. Those are your 5 topics for this Friday. Hey, let's make a return to some things we used to do and will continue to do, provided you guys do your end of the bargain. You know that morningcombat@gmail.com is where you can reach the show, complain, suggest, all that. It's also your opportunity for the next 2 segments, Dead Wrong and what do we call that? Fan sub. So let's start with the first one. We're going to give you that chance each Friday. If you listen to us and you're pissed off at something we said wrong, to email the show. I don't think we have the intro ready today, but here is one dead wrong. So Luke, let's see who they're throwing it at. This one is from Daz. You know Daz from Hawaii.
Yeah,
Mahalo.
Daz, back up on that ass and give these motherfuckers a blast from the past.
Daz, probably my 3rd favorite Hawaiian after Telvin Kipapa and Governor Penn, Luke. But here we go. He says, aloha, donks. On Monday's episode, October 21st, at about 51 minutes in, Luke is discussing Cyborg's claim to MMA women's goatship after beating Pacheco. And he states that Pacheco, quote, just came off the Kayla Harrison win. Luke, that win was in November of 22 at 155. Pacheco fought 4 times in 2023 to win that season's title in the 145-pound tournament. It seems like PFL did such a horrible job marketing that 23 season that even Luke Thomas forgot it ever happened. Glad to see BC has started his own channel and that MK is back twice a week as my only contributions happen via Dead Wrong. Luke, will you take that L?
Yeah, I'll take the L. I knew there were fights afterwards. I'm more because I think I was at the fight where Pacheco beat Harrison. I believe I was at that. Was that the one in DC? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It may have been. We'll have to wait till next week if Daz corrects you again, Luke.
I'll double check that. I'll take the L because there definitely were some fights I did forget about, but I didn't think it was her very last one. But nevertheless, the spirit of the correction is very correct.
All right, there you go. That is Dead Wrong. Luke will take the L.
Kayla Larissa was in Manhattan.
So no. So what was the one that I saw? Jesus, was that the one that I saw and I completely forgot? Hold on. The one that I saw was... the Marina Moknatkina fight, which was the one several after the Kayla fight. Yeah, I forgot a bunch of these. Yeah, no, it's a good correction. Holy shit.
Right. Our final segment of the day, in Average Joe Art is already saying next week he's going to be back in a big way, but this is your opportunity to get your artwork shown, pictures of your family in our tight clothes. Yeah, we call this one fan submissions.
You've got mail.
Viewers.
Hey, shouts to Gaff.
Shout out to Gaffney J. Pierre, who you can find, I heard, every week on the Main Card Minute podcast. The first one comes at us from Nova Scotia's finest, from Mount Unike with love. It's Jay Paquette. He says, good day, Luke, BC, and Donk Nation. Dawn, the boss lady, is back on the road with her first stop of the 2024 MK Global Merch Tour. Singapore for a week and then on to Australia for the rest of July. Luke, there is the boss lady herself, Dawn Paquette, rocking MK down there in Asia and Singapore. That's a hell of a beautiful location there, would you say?
Did she meet up with Chatri Sityod Tong?
Wow, and talked grappling? That would be something right there. So we'll see Dawn's continued movement across the globe. Do you think Jay forces her to pack MK merch in that suitcase?
There's no doubt in my mind. Those guys or he in particular is a hardcore. Shouts to Big J.
Yeah, all well. Shout out to Appy too, if he's still around. Luke, I love me some Appy. Just like from a distance, right? Great.
You gonna bang him this year?
No, that's not one of my goals, Luke, to be fair, but I almost had a chance to see him in Paris. Hey, let's go over to Dropped Out Beats. Hey, Luke and MK, please accept my morning combat intro that you can use at the link below for free. Just shout me out. So this guy's name is Ashkan, and Ashkan has created a new MK theme song and opening here. Let's see it. Luke, the remix.
Size for that. That was good.
Do you think we should add that on to Friday's intro, and that'll be the official Friday intro for the people?
Only if we can get that for free and we don't have to pay a dime because there is no budget.
Well, that is also true right there. But wow, shout out to Ashkan for dropping that hardcore.
Yes, big thank you. That was fantastic. I'll dig that. I dig that. That was great.
Yeah, I'm into that. All right, our third one comes to us from PF. Here is BC getting a haircut, apparently.
Is that just some random redneck?
It kind of looks like Ramzan Kadyrov, right?
It's like if you and Ramzan banged and then had a kid, you know?
Yes. Okay, I guess it's a picture of a man getting his haircut that apparently looks like me. Would you say at all, Luke? Is that man Lithuanian? I don't think so.
What do you think, Long Island Aussie rules, Luke? Does that look like BC?
Loosely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's
Well, thank you, PF.
Hey, listen, they can't all be winners, BC.
Yeah.
They can't all be winners.
Not all of our listeners can be winners. Hey, this one's from Dire Badger. He says, this meme was a lot more relevant when MK was on hiatus, but I did find out what donks are searching for in relation to Luke. Wow.
It's not like I went out on some gigantic tour of like Izzy and Volk are bad. Like, I don't get that. Like, I'm the guy who supported City Kickboxing before half the world recognized they were good, first of all. And I'm the one that recognized when their reigns came to an end before the rest of the world. Like, I feel like everybody is behind the curve and I'm getting blamed for being ahead of it. Lick my balls.
That's just the equivalent to the I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it line. I mean, come on.
By the way, my mom delivered a time or two. I'm just saying, like, how are y'all on? It's like I don't think Izzy is the second best middleweight of all time. Volk was #1 pound for pound in the world. We celebrated them when that was it. But like, dude, there's new people coming into the sport. I'm supposed to ignore that? Fuck off.
Well, you did text me last night in the middle of the night. Eugene Bearman was never my friend. And I was like, okay, that's
okay. I never texted you that, you fucking lying douchebag. But, you know.
Wow. I got DB status right there. Hey, we got one more from Joe. I don't know if this is an average Joe or a more, or a lesser quality one. But here's a Star Wars Luke meme. I doubt it's average Joe. What do we got here?
When Topuria says, honestly, Phantom Menace wasn't that bad. All right, see, this is funny. This is funny. By the way, even if he said that, I would lose respect for him. Can I just be honest? It's the worst movie ever made. If you like Phantom Menace, it's because you don't read books, and to the extent that you read it all, it's at a 5th grade level. Fuck your life. You're an
or you
idiot
might
if you
like
that
it
movie.
because you do read books, but you're all jacking off to the graphic novels of Star Wars. Like you got to draw a limit.
What's worse, jacking off, which I don't do, but jacking off to the Star Wars like graphic novels, or actually thinking Phantom Menace is good? Jacking off to the Star Wars is graphic novels is much more acceptable.
Ahsoka's kind of sneaky, to be fair, right, Luke? For an alien,
the show, or like it's Rosario Dawson. Like, yeah, she rules, but
I was talking more about the cartoon character with the alien look. Maybe I got the wrong one.
I'm sorry. Are you under the impression that I have time in my life to watch Star Wars cartoons? Because I don't.
No. Well, you do have a child in your house. Why don't you get her up on Star Wars like I did to my kids?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. I've tried to do that for a number of times, and she just rejected it every time. And then the other day, I actually put on the original. Is the original A New Hope?
Yes.
Yeah. So I put on A New Hope, and she was loving it. And we had to go to bed, and she was like, "How can I finish Star Wars?" I'm like, "No, we have to go to bed." And she was pitching a fit about it. So,
dude, let her watch the whole thing and then watch it another time over again.
Nah, because if I don't let her get sleep, she's a nightmare the next day. She gotta get to sleep.
True.
But
just like her dad, to be fair.
I may have finally turned a corner. I may have finally done it.
All right. Well done. Good work right there, Luke Thomas there. And that is, by the way, our show for the week. Guys, really enjoy 308 tomorrow. You get an early start time. It'll be over by dinner time on the East Coast. Luke, will you be vaping on air in your post-fight breakdown?
I'm sure I will be. Yeah, join me, Luke Thomas, on YouTube. I'll be doing that.
I'll be on CBS Sports HQ after the main event. You can check that out live. You can follow and subscribe at our channels below. For the final time, Long Island Luke of the Main Card Minute. I assume you're going to have a busy day tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be live for the whole card. Join me 10 a.m. and then you can join Luke afterwards.
Hey, is there any one bet you didn't get to mention on air that you feel like, what's the lock of the week?
Not my lock of the week, but my favorite bet of the week is Aleksandar Rakić money line plus 350. If he hits again, it'll be back-to-back weeks plus 350 plus.
And he needs a win badly. And we know he's championship quality. He just hasn't put it together, right? I'm not crazy.
And it's only 3 rounds, which I think actually favors him here. So
okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Us back into that. Thank you, Long Island Luke, right there. That's the show. Check out True Classic, by the way. Okay, you can pick up our merch first of all at morningcombat.store. Okay, check that out. 10% off using our code LIVE10. And then, of course, you can see that shirt. You probably can't see my sweatpants, but True Classic's got a lot going on, especially for our viewers here. So why don't you go to trueclassic.com/combat with a K and see what we are talking about. Great fit, great quality. Great everything, Luke. I mean, it kind of makes me look like I've got Joaquin Buckley size pecs when I wear the True Classic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the True Classic stuff, I love it. I actually bought True Classic before we even got offered the sponsorship. So that's like the ultimate sign of respect for it. So there you go. I mean, when they offered it to us, I was like, I literally already own the stuff. So, and then they sent me more. So now I have even more. But yeah, trueclassic.com/combat with a K.
Hey, True Classic, I want more. Let's work on that drug rug collab together, maybe. All right, there you go. For Long Island Luke, for regular Luke Thomas, I am BC signing off. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We love you. Check out our solo channels. We are out of here.